Hi, it's Katrina. We all love a good story, the kind that makes you shiver or wonder, what if? But what happens when those stories from the dark corners of the internet or the back roads of America refuse to stay just stories? What if some of the most outlandish modern myths and urban legends have just enough truth to make you question everything? Today, we are diving deep into the fascinating, sometimes terrifying world where fact blurs with fiction. From the legendary bottomless pit known as Mel's Hole to other inexplicable tales that refuse to die, prepare to have your skepticism challenged and your imagination ignited, because sometimes the most unbelievable stories are the ones that stick with us the most. The Creepiest Bottomless Pit. In the sleepy, dark woods of Washington state, the kind of place where Bigfoot might retire and take up gardening, there is a hole. A hole so deep, so bottomless, that if you were to stand on its edge and look down, you would definitely fall in and keep falling forever. It's a place where radios break, pets come back to life, kind of, and some strange things happen with sheep. Most people think it's just an urban legend or a paranormal place that only certain people can see. Listen to this and then let me know what you think. On February 21st, 1997, a guy calling himself Mel Waters rang up the late-night paranormal radio show Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell. That AM radio used to have all the good stuff. Mel calmly dropped the claim that he had a bottomless pit on his land near Manastash Ridge in Washington state. According to locals, it had been there forever, and it was dubbed the Devil's Hole. So not exactly the kind of place you take your hot date on a picnic. From the get-go, there was a lot of suspicion around Mel, especially because he refused to give the exact location of the alleged bottomless pit. It's like saying you've got the chupacabra tied up in your basement, but you won't let anyone in your basement to check. Mel said that to test the hole's depths, he attached a fishing weight to 80,000 feet of line, which is over 15 miles. For comparison, the deepest known cave on Earth is about 7,200 feet. If Mel's math is correct, his hole goes down roughly a quarter of the way through the Earth's crust. Apparently, the line just kept going. No bottom, no tug, just infinite darkness and a growing sense of dread as the line descended into an abyss without end. But wait a second, who owns that much fishing line? Even that extreme fisherman guy, Jeremy Wade from the Discovery Channel, who caught absolute monsters for years, I doubt he has even half that much line laying around. Do you? And secondly, how did Mel know the fishing line was going straight down vertically and not just collecting in a big pile 1,000 feet down in a dark pit? Now, here's where things get terrifying and the devil/horror part kicks in. According to Mel, a neighbor chucked their dead dog into the pit, as one apparently does when they can't afford a shovel and a tombstone, only to see the same dog walking around the woods soon after, alive. It was wearing the same collar and looked healthy. It was clearly the same dog, but it didn't act right. It was emotionally distant and didn't recognize its owner. What in the pet cemetery is going on here? Mel also claimed electronics lost their minds near the hole. He said portable radios picked up strange voices, music from the past, and channels that didn't even exist, like a haunted Spotify premium subscription. After the fishing line fiasco, Mel started lowering weirder and weirder stuff into the pit. Each time he lowered something inside, it seemed to have a different result. In what may be the strangest science fair project ever, Mel lowered a bucket of ice into the hole. When he pulled it up, the ice was warm but hadn't melted. Next up, a sheep. To continue this freakish science experiment, Mel lowered a live sheep 1,500 feet down into the hole. I don't know what he was thinking, but according to his story, the sheep stopped screaming about halfway through its descent. When Mel brought it back up, the sheep was cooked from the inside out and had a tumor that moved like it was alive. And it was alive! Mel cracked open the tumor to find a seal fetus with human eyes. The creature, which sounds so horrendous and unnatural that I probably won't sleep tonight, blinked at Mel and his cancer was instantly cured. And the fate of this creature? Mel said it jumped back into the hole. However, some locals apparently saw it later, squirming around like something from the Black Lagoon. As if all this weren't enough, there's more. A neighbor once witnessed a beam of black light emerge from the hole like someone just activated a magic crystal. It wasn't just darkness, but rather light so dark it made the regular black of night seem beige. Mel described it as a flashlight, but instead of illuminating, it sucked the light out of the air. And that was around the time the government showed up. Mel was allegedly intercepted by suit-wearing agents. He was told the area was shut down due to a plane crash and saw guys in biohazard suits near the site. Later, the government leased the land and paid him off to move to Australia. And since then, nobody has seen Mel's hole. As for Mel, he remained out of the country until he got bored. When he returned to the US, he was kidnapped. Mel said he woke up 2 weeks later in San Francisco. He was missing some teeth, had IV marks on his arms, and had zero memory of what happened. After that, no one knows what became of Mel and his mysterious hole. Someone definitely called into the radio and told this incredible story. Since that day, people have been repeating it and trying to find more information. It began growing and morphing into one of the most famous urban legends of all time. Mel's hole has been discussed on forums, featured in documentaries, and debated by Reddit users, UFO enthusiasts, and amateur geologists. Some say it's a UFO base. Others say it's a dimensional rift. A few just want to go camping nearby to see what happens, but I'm not sure I'd recommend it. But where is Mel's hole, and is it real? Maybe, maybe not. If you ever find yourself in rural Washington and hear whispers coming from a seemingly infinite pit in the ground, just turn around. Don't toss in your dog, don't lower in a sheep, and definitely don't try to look inside. And now for a quick break because it's shoutout time. I want to give a big thank you to Dustin Bear and Dominic Young for supporting this channel. We wouldn't be here without you guys. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already to join the Origins Explained family. The killer arcade game, Polybius. Some games don't just take your loose change, they take your mind. In the golden haze of 1981, back when arcades glowed like neon churches and kids lined up to die repeatedly in Tempest or Donkey Kong, a boy named Bobby Feldstein claimed to have played something different. Something that wasn't like the other games. This game was deadly. Bobby stepped into Coin Kingdom, a sketchy Portland arcade that probably smelled like cheese fries and musty shag carpet. With his fistful of coins, he was eager to try out a mysterious new cabinet game that he hadn't noticed there before. It was sleek, ominous, and extremely alluring. The game was called Polybius. After playing it for a bit, it began to melt into his brain. Reality started to take on new shapes, fracturing before his very eyes. By the time Bobby got home, things were glitching in his head, and that was when the Men in Black showed up. What followed reads like an episode of Stranger Things written by a conspiracy theorist. Bobby was abducted, woke up underground, escaped with the help of a mangled child, and emerged in the forest 60 miles from home. When he told his epic tale of survival, nobody believed him. I mean, would you believe someone who told you they played a game that broke reality and then got kidnapped and escaped from an underground bunker? Decades later, Bobby was still telling this tale on walking tours through Portland. This guy put together his own walking tours to thrill tourists with what is now known as the Polybius conspiracy. Only there's just one thing. Nobody can recall ever taking this walking tour. In fact, nobody remembers ever meeting a Bobby Feldstein. Coin Kingdom in Portland doesn't exist, and there are no records that it ever did. So where did this whole thing start? The story of Polybius was made popular by two guys, John Frechette and Todd Luoto, but they weren't the ones who cooked it up. They learned of it, did a deep dive into the urban legend online, and then made it popular on their podcast. According to John and Todd, Polybius is a fabled arcade game supposedly created by shady government entities to fry teenagers' brains with subliminal messages in the early 1980s. It was like an out-of-control CIA mind experiment. Remember when they used to do that? MK Ultra, anyone? Creating an arcade game to melt brains is not that far-fetched when you know the CIA tried to create an army of telepathic super soldiers who could astral project. Don't believe me? Just Google it, I dare you. Polybius supposedly appeared in random arcades, where it stayed to melt brains for a few days before being pulled by the Men in Black types. Kids who played it suffered memory loss, nightmares, and even seizures. But the worst side effect was a seeming detachment from reality. which I have a hunch is what the CIA wanted all along. Now, whether Polybius was ever real or not, the story of how it exploded into popular culture is still a great lesson in how to create an urban legend. After John and Todd discussed the game and the story of Bobby on their podcast, which they may have made up out of thin air, it took off. Portland Monthly wrote about Bobby's walking tours like they were fact. Uproxx called the show a story about trauma and cultural anxiety. Vulture described it as a 7-part audio documentary. Listeners were hooked, theorizing in comment sections and trying to find traces of Bobby online. All these magazines and online publications were making it seem as if Bobby was a real, verified, documented human being. But he wasn't, and that only fueled the myth, making more and more people believe in the story. This is hardly the first time an insane story has taken America by storm. Remember the Blair Witch Project? Using brilliant sleight of hand, the filmmakers turned fake footage into mainstream hysteria by never outright saying that their movie was fake. They simply alluded to the found footage being found, and when the Blair Witch Project came out, millions of people thought they were watching actual footage discovered in the forest. This is how the Polybius conspiracy was born. Perhaps the CIA really did create a mind-melting arcade game, but the story is so wrapped up in podcasts and strange stories that few will ever believe it's real. What do you believe, my friends? What do you think the CIA is capable of? The urban legend that turned out to be a real-life horror story. This is the terrifying story of an urban legend that turned out to be true. Under the twisted limbs of Staten Island's woods, where rusted ruins lean like half-forgotten memories, a name once echoed in the whispers of children and the warnings of parents. That name was Cropsey. He wasn't just a ghost story. He was the man with a hook for a hand and a scarred face. He was the child-snatching lunatic who haunted abandoned buildings and preyed on the innocent. Cropsey was the kind of figure you'd swear was invented just to make sure no kid ever wandered off after dark, like the Boogeyman or the Candyman. But here's the thing, Cropsey was real. His name was Andre Rand, and his story is more terrifying than any urban legend. The myth painted Cropsey as a mentally unstable man, perhaps one who had lost his own child and, consumed by grief, began taking others. He was said to live in the woods, deformed, disfigured, looking like something not quite human. Parents warned their children not to go outside lest the disgruntled Cropsey come out of the woods and snatch them up. This was a real story told by New Yorkers in the 1970s, especially on Staten Island. The tale spread like wildfire, mutating like a virus until kids were trading Cropsey stories like baseball cards. Kids out and about had seen him lurking. He had a hook for a hand, some said. Others swore his face was burned beyond recognition, like Freddy Krueger. He lurked near the ruins of old asylums, just beyond the edge of town, always out of sight. Right where teens up to no good like to hang out. Most people chalk the story up to overactive imaginations and too many late-night slasher movies. But on Staten Island, Cropsey was anything but imaginary. A real-life killer named Andre Rand was on the loose, and he was as real and as deadly as a man can be. Andre was born sometime in the 1940s. He worked as a custodian at Willowbrook State School, a facility meant to serve children with developmental disabilities. In reality, Willowbrook was a house of horrors, rife with neglect, abuse, and squalid conditions. In 1983, Rand decided to hijack a school bus and take 11 kids for a field trip without telling anyone. The joyride ended at Newark Airport, where he was apprehended, but his motivation was never revealed. The kids were rescued and Rand got 10 months behind bars. Where did he think he was going with 11 kids at an airport? Did Andre really think he could fly them to his own personal murder island? Honestly, this should have been the end of Rand. After kidnapping 11 children, I think we can all agree that you don't belong in society anymore. Because guess what Rand kept doing? He kept hanging around kids, offering to walk them home, buying them snacks at diners. He was older, strange, and unsettling. Parents warned their kids to stay away. Kids whispered about the man in the shadows. And when children started vanishing, it didn't take long before the myth of Cropsey fused with the very real terror of Andre Rand. For years, no one could put anything on Rand. Kids would disappear and he'd always be the last person seen with them. But there were no bodies and no witnesses, just that gut-churning feeling that something was horribly wrong. Things changed for Rand in 1987 when 12-year-old Jennifer Schweiger, who had Down syndrome, vanished. Her body was found buried in the woods near Willowbrook. This time, police had enough evidence to charge Rand with murder. It was horrifying, truly disturbing, and as heinous as any crime can be. The community was torn apart, and then more names surfaced. Rand had been killing for a long time. Alice Pereira vanished in 1972. Holly Ann Hughes was gone in 1981. Tiahese Jackson, 1983. Hank Gafforio, 1984. All children, all missing. And Rand was the common thread. Ready to have your blood boil? Rand was never charged with murder, even though it was painfully obvious he was the culprit. Rand was convicted of kidnapping, but no murder charges stuck. Let's just be thankful the judge recognized a dangerous man and condemned Rand to 2 consecutive life sentences. He is currently serving time until 2037. Right now, he's 81 years old. Staten Island sleeps easier with Rand behind bars, but it's never really recovered from the horror of when an urban legend came to life as a stone-cold, dead-eyed, twisted serial killer. The corpse that wouldn't quit. What does a creaky carnival, a dangling mummy, and a TV crew trying to film a bionic man fighting a Nazi all have in common? The answer is a dead body hidden in a creepy funhouse. When you were a kid, did you ever hear stories about Halloween funhouses using real corpses as decorations? These dead bodies were either stolen from cemeteries or acquired through some sort of serial killer. But it was always just an urban legend, something to spook the kids on All Hallows Eve. Or so everyone thought. In December 1976, on the set of The $6 Million Man, a crew member tried to reposition a waxy mannequin hanging from a noose in a dimly lit funhouse corner in Long Beach, California. The creepy wax mannequin had been swaying there for 4 years, glowing orange under cheap paint, scaring kids and collecting dust. But when the arm snapped off with a dry crack, the art director realized something was off. That wasn't wax, that was human bone. Turns out the wax mannequin was actually a mummified human, a real dead person with leathery old flesh stretched over muscle and bone, a body long dead but still hanging on, literally. And that is how the long-dead outlaw Elmer McCurdy was discovered moonlighting as a haunted house prop. Yes, this story is real. It has gunslingers, government shenanigans, glowing goo, carnivals, kids roller skating a corpse through the living room, and an embalmer who went full capitalism on a corpse. So let's ride this morbid carousel all the way around. Born on January 1st, 1880, Elmer McCurdy had a childhood that even daytime talk shows would call too messy to put on the air. Elmer's life was so weird, not even Jerry Springer could handle him. Orphaned, estranged, and broke, he drifted west with a suitcase full of bad luck and a thirst for chaos. And alcohol. So much alcohol. Elmer started drinking heavily at a very young age. He joined the army, learned just enough about nitroglycerin to be dangerous, and then did what any explosives-happy drifter might do in 1910. He joined a gang and became a wannabe outlaw. The only problem was he sucked at crime. Elmer's criminal resume includes blowing up a safe full of silver so badly that all he got were melted coins, robbing the wrong train to walk away with $46, 2 jugs of whiskey and someone's coat, and botching a bank job so completely he left with only $150 in coins because he couldn't light the fuse to open the safe. Elmer was a bad criminal and got caught shortly after his spree began. He tried to hide in a hayloft with his loot and his liquor, but on October 7, 1911, 3 sheriffs and a pack of bloodhounds tracked him down, opened fire, and Elmer was killed. Under most circumstances, this would have been the end of Elmer's story. He died a lonely and troubled, failed criminal, and that should have been the end of it. But no, Elmer McCurdy's story was just getting started. With no family stepping forward to claim his body, the funeral home in Pawaska, Oklahoma decided to preserve it the old-fashioned way, by arsenic embalming. It's the same formula that was used on unclaimed Civil War soldiers. McCurdy hardened into a human jerky stick with wisps of hair and a sneer like he was judging you from beyond the grave. The mortician, Joseph L. Johnson, got a little too creative. He stood Elmer up, gave him a rifle, slapped a 5-cent entry fee on him, and dubbed him the bandit who wouldn't give up. And people paid to see him. They dropped coins into his mouth like a cursed vending machine. This was some Weekend at Bernie's stuff. The mortician's kids allegedly put roller skates on Elmer and wheeled him around the parlor. There's family game night, and then there's dead people on rollerblades. I guess that's what happens when kids don't have video games. 5 years later, 2 men arrived at the mortician's place claiming to be Elmer's long-lost brothers. But they were really con artists Charles and James Patterson. They promptly stole the corpse and tossed it into their traveling carnival. From there, Elmer hit the road for 6 straight decades, racking up more miles in death than most of us do in life. He starred in sideshows and even drug awareness campaigns as the corpse of a dope fiend meant to scare teens straight. Elmer was the cowboy crypt keeper. He was called the outlaw who would never be captured alive, the embalmed bandit, and the 1,000-year-old man. At some point, people forgot his real name. After 60 years, carnivals began to fade from the American landscape. Elmer's corpse was passed around like a creepy souvenir. He suffered wind damage in South Dakota. He was displayed in theaters for the 1933 film Narcotic like a disturbing statue, and he was cast in the 1967 film She-Freak, though obviously he didn't get paid for it. Elmer was even sold in a bulk wax figure deal to the Hollywood Wax Museum. The curators at the museum took one look and said, "Yeah, we're not putting that on display." Eventually, Elmer was dumped into a funhouse at Queen's Park where he dangled in a noose for years as just another scary mannequin, slowly being forgotten. And then his arm snapped, someone realized he was a corpse, and paramedics found a 1924 penny with tickets to the Museum of Crime jammed inside his mouth. They'd been there for 50 years. Once identified, McCurdy was finally buried in 1977. For real this time. His grave is in Guthrie, Oklahoma, next to fellow outlaw Bill Doolin. His grave was sealed with 2 feet of concrete to prevent anyone from pulling one last carny stunt. I think the most touching part is that 300 people showed up to his funeral, way more than when he died the first time 100 years earlier. I mean, he only technically died once, but you know what I mean. In the aftermath of Elmer's discovery in the 70s, corpses in funhouses became an urban legend, just like alligators in the sewers. But what we didn't know was that the legend was born of a real story. The truth behind Bloody Mary. You're at a sleepover, someone dares you to go into the bathroom, switch off the lights, and say Bloody Mary into the mirror 3 times, like you're going to summon Beetlejuice. You roll your eyes, mutter her name twice, and just as you're about to say it a 3rd time, someone flicks on the lights, screams, and you're almost peeing your pants. Congratulations! I just took you back to every sleepover from the 2000s. Everyone has heard the legend of Bloody Mary. And if you're a millennial, you probably tried to summon her in high school, when you weren't busy predicting your futures with MASH or one of those paper-folding oracle devices. You know what I'm talking about. Bloody Mary is the ghost who is supposed to show up in your bathroom mirror, silently screaming with blood oozing from her mouth, sometimes holding a baby like a spectral babysitter gone horribly wrong. But here's the real question. Who the heck is Bloody Mary? And was she a real person? If so, who turned her into an urban legend? It's time for a tale of murder, politics, fake pregnancies, religious warfare, and a lot of burning people alive. Although Bloody Mary is without a doubt a modern urban legend, she has her roots in the old world. Mary's story starts in 16th century England, a time when wearing the wrong color or praying the wrong way could get you executed. In 1516, a girl was born to King Henry VIII and Catherine of Aragon. From day one, her life was the Tudor version of a soap opera, but with more beheadings. Her name was Mary. She would grow up to become Queen Mary I, aka Bloody Mary. King Henry, as you probably remember, was obsessed with having a male heir. When she was born, she was already a big disappointment. Henry failed to have a son, so he had a midlife crisis instead. He tossed aside Mary's mother, Queen Catherine, a Catholic, to marry Anne Boleyn. Anne and her family were Protestants, and so this marital madness tore England away from the Catholic Church. He also declared Mary illegitimate and turned his own daughter from a princess to a peasant. Mary spent her childhood watching her father go through his wives and learned early on to be careful. Jane Seymour finally gave Henry his long-awaited son, Edward VI. Sadly, though, Edward died young, and when he did, Mary was old enough to take the throne. Even though she was technically illegitimate, she had thousands of Catholic supporters. They all got together and marched on London. In 1553, Mary snatched the crown from Lady Jane Grey, who ruled for a whopping 9 days, and sent her to the executioner. Mary was crowned Queen of England. The new queen was extremely religious and could not wait to turn over all the changes her scary father had made. She made it her royal mission to reunite England with the Roman Catholic Church. Mary hated the Protestants of England with a passion and ordered all of them to be burned alive. She resurrected an old law called De Heretico Comburendo, which translates into modern English as burn the heretics. I think you can see where this is going. Between 1555 and 1558, nearly 300 Protestants were burned alive, and not just the peasants. She burned Thomas Cranmer, Bishop Hugh Latimer, and Bishop Nicholas Ridley, just to name a few holy higher-ups. Mary had hoped the executions would scare people back into the Catholic fold. Instead, she created martyrs. People were more against the church than they had ever been. Fun fact, well, actually, super morbid fact, Mary's father, King Henry VIII, had tens of thousands executed, and her sister, Elizabeth I, hanged and disemboweled over 180 Catholics. But Mary was the only one who got the bloody nickname. So how did this mean queen from history make it into your bathroom mirror at the slumber party? And why is she sometimes holding a baby when summoned? The baby is, oddly enough, the easier explanation. Mary was desperate to have a child. At age 37, she married Philip II of Spain. 2 months later, she announced she was pregnant. But when it came time to deliver the baby, there was no baby. Rumors started to spread that Mary had had a molar pregnancy, a rare condition in which a massive tissue grows in the womb instead of a baby. The French court cruelly whispered that Mary had given birth to a mole or a lump of flesh. Then it happened again. Another phantom pregnancy, another royal letdown. Mary died childless in 1558, likely from cancer. Between the failed pregnancies, obsession with motherhood, and rivers of Protestant blood, Queen Mary I does seem like the best contender for the original Bloody Mary. But there are other suspects. The other Marys. Mary Worth was either a child-murdering witch or a twisted slave hunter in 19th century Illinois. Some stories say she was burned at the stake for killing children and using their blood for beauty rituals. Before dying, she allegedly screamed that she'd come back from the dead if anyone dared speak her name into a mirror. Other tales say that Mary Worth ran a reverse underground railroad, capturing escaped slaves and sending them back south. Oh yeah, and torturing them in her spare time. She was eventually killed by angry locals. Mary Worth sounds very Bloody Mary to me. But there is one more suspect, Elizabeth Bathory, the Bloody Countess. A Hungarian noblewoman born in the late 1500s, Bathory was charged with murdering at least 80 young girls. One witness claimed her personal diary listed 650 victims. The methods of murder were like something out of a medieval Saw movie. There was burning, mutilation, even sewing mouths shut. And yes, legends say she bathed in virgin blood to stay young. She was never officially executed thanks to her nobility privilege, but she was walled into her own castle until she died. creepy enough to inspire a ghost in the mirror? You bet. So why is Bloody Mary still an urban legend? The biggest mystery of all is how Mary ended up in our mirrors. Was she the vengeful queen who burned Protestants and died childless? The witch who cursed her village from beyond the grave? The countess who turned murder into a skincare routine? No one knows for sure. No one knows why she's still around. But the fact remains that Bloody Mary is one of the most chilling urban legends of all time. She's the reason your friend's little sister refuses to use the bathroom alone and she's 26. She's the reason flashlights exist. And she's the reason you should never chant names into mirrors like it's a party trick. It's just not worth it. Thanks for watching. What's your favorite urban legend? And would you like to see another video with even crazier stories? Let me know in the comments.